Okay, welcome to the show. Welcome to Overtime. Back again.
Hi, good to see you, Josh.
Good to see you. How have we been?
It's a great question. We are
It's
good.
the
We are
Royal Week.
ready for the fantasy playoffs. We are excited that week 13 had no drama with COVID-19 and games hopefully going onward are going to be perfect and scheduled well.
Absolutely. Week 13 is the final week of the regular season for fantasy players. Outside of the obvious choices, the Tyreek Hills, the Mahomes, the Kamaras, who have been your surprise standout fantasy players?
Oh man, the rookies, Justin Herbert, granted, not great against the Patriots, shut out 45-0, but rookies, I wouldn't have started him in fantasy up against Bill Belichick. He sort of has his way of making rookies look like they're like kindergartners. I will say I love and am so impressed by Justin Jefferson. This is, the fact that the Vikings are not saying, we miss Stephon Diggs and crying that he's now a Buffalo Bill. It's really a testament to how good Justin Jefferson has been there. And with things like COVID-19 and lack of practice, no preseason for a rookie to hit 1,000 yards through 12 games, that is rare company. That is like Randy Moss kind of stuff. Yeah. And Bolden, very, very rare company. So for him to do it the way he is doing it, stepping in, is incredible. He has 1,000 yards for you fantasy owners, and he was not drafted that way. I think he should be Rookie of the Year.
Interesting. Okay, we're heading into the playoffs. Do you stick with the team that got you through the season, or do you hit the waiver wire?
Oh man, I think there's definitely guys out there that should be owned still that aren't. Alan Lazard is one of those. He had surgery. He left. I know it's very much Aaron Rodgers to our guy Devontae Adams. We saw it last week with the, in week 13 with the 400th touchdown reception or throw and then the catch from Adams. But it's Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball, right? So Alan Lazard in that offense should be owned down the stretch. They've got a favorable schedule on the way. So there's guys like that where you have to look at the schedule for weeks 14, 15, and 16 and say, we all know this season has been crazy, ups and downs. Who knows if these guys are going to be able to play? I want to add as much depth. So I would definitely be looking at guys like Lazard to add and bolster my offense.
Do you stick with the players that maybe play on poorer teams?
I think it depends on matchups. There's guys who play really tough matchups like James Robinson, the running back for the Jaguars, who's another breakout player this year that nobody really thought about or gave a second look at when they were drafting. That, despite matchup, despite game script, despite whatever, like you want to play those guys. Like Tom Brady has not been trustworthy every week. Like he's up and down. But if you look at his schedule for weeks 14, 15, and 16, like it's beautiful. So I would have a hard time taking any of those Buccaneers out of my lineup.
100%. And one player who went off was Darren Waller. Are we right to get excited about him? He's one of my favorite players in the league just because of his story. But, he's got the Colts next week.
Yeah.
Slightly difficult defense to play against. But
tough defense, but they're putting up like the Rivers and now Jonathan Taylor looks good. Like they're putting up numbers, so other teams have to score to be competitive. So I actually I would go ahead and play him just because over the past 4 weeks, Josh, he has been the third best fantasy tight end, only behind Hunter Henry, I think, and Travis Kelce. So that's he's up there. When you're putting a tight end in your lineup, you're putting him in for 5 catches, 60 yards, and maybe a touchdown. So it's a very low floor. And when you have Darren Waller, who could somehow put up a ceiling of 28, 29 points, quarterback points, like that's not a guy I'm ever taking out of my lineup. Though I will say he'll be a top 5 guy, then he'll be outside the top 10, and it's inconsistent, but his upside sort of outweighs anything. So I'm still playing him even in a tough matchup against Indy.
So we're Team Waller right now because I like
that story. He is impossible to not root for. You are so right.
100%. And week 14, first round of the knockouts. Who are we targeting apart from the obvious?
I'm going to go with, I mentioned Justin Jefferson. I'm going to stick with Kirk Cousins. People gave me so much grief when I said start Kirk Cousins week 13 and he was throwing interceptions and he was awful. And I had so many tweets, Josh, and I just said, okay, calm down. I'm just going to take notes of all these people because it's never pretty with Cousins. It's always ugly, but at the end of the game, he somehow has 300 yards and multiple touchdowns. And this past week, he pretty much did just that, hitting that 300-yard mark. They went to overtime. This week, it's the Buccaneers, Tom Brady. Vikings defense doesn't have it. They don't. They simply don't. So I think Tom Brady is going to score at will, and I would still trust Kirk Cousins in my fantasy playoffs.
Interesting. Well, Kate, as insightful as always, helping fantasy players across the world. We appreciate you coming on as always.
Thanks, Josh.